Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by Tiffany. You might be unaware from mainstream media, but there seems to be a chemical bomb that is continuing to spread in Georgia and also seems to be spreading to other places too, as far as Alabama and Florida. This is now day 6 after a chemical plant in Conyers, Georgia, uh, began a fire. They say it was from a malfunctioning sprinkler. I don't know about that. But Tiffany, you live about 25 minutes away
That's
from the plant. And people might be saying, well, why are you speaking with someone 25 minutes away? Because this is going as far as 100 miles away. This plume, this haze, and you and your sister have both experienced symptoms. Let's start with you. Can you kind of describe when you first realized that there was a fire and how quickly you started seeing smoke, a haze, and symptoms began?
Yeah, so I learned about it on Monday morning. I believe the fire happened on Sunday evening. I learned about it Monday morning through Twitter, of course, and just, obviously thought it was crazy, but it wasn't until Monday evening that I started experiencing symptoms. I do have a 2-year-old, and she happened to have a sinus infection this week. And at the time, I didn't know it was a sinus infection, so I thought I was catching whatever she had. Monday evening, I had what felt like a fever, but I wasn't running a high temperature. I had chills and body aches that were pretty severe. Um, and again, I thought I was getting sick for my daughter. The next day, I actually found out she had a sinus infection, which isn't contagious or anything. So,
Is that something common for her? Or?
no, it's uncommon for her. So, that's something to note as well. But yeah, I was having the body aches and the chills. And then that was at about 5 p.m. At around 11, just completely went away. Um, it was just the strangest thing. And so that prompted me to actually text my sister, who had earlier in the day told me she was going to take off of work because she wasn't feeling well. And I asked her, I was like, what are your symptoms? And I was telling her my symptoms, which were the feverish symptoms, along with I also had a headache, nausea, and what felt like a stuffy nose without like the mucus. And she was like, I have the exact same symptoms. And so automatically a light bulb went off for me. And I was like, okay, we might be experiencing symptoms from the fire that we learned about earlier today.
And
Um,
how far does she live from
he lives
the
about
plant?
30 away in Lithonia.
So
Yeah,
you guys don't live like down the block, 25 minutes away, a half hour away, yet you were still experiencing severe symptoms.
exactly. And I do want to add that I do have asthma and an autoimmune disease. And so I know that I'm in like that vulnerable population that governments like to throw under the bus basically when situations like this happen. They're like, oh, if you are vulnerable, then you might experience some symptoms of whatever the issue is. So yeah, and my sister also has some not she's not diagnosed with asthma, but potentially has something like that. So that could also be a reason why she's reacting to the chemical haze as well. So yeah, Monday
Right.
was my symptoms.
And your sister, you posted this on Twitter, but she went to the doctor and pretty alarming.
Yeah.
Uh, Sore throat,
Hmm.
acute pharyngitis, pleuritic chest pain, and
Hmm.
chlorine gas exposure.
Yes.
The doctor diagnosed her with,
Hmm.
and if you add, let me full screen that. If you add what else they said, there is no specific antidote for chlorine inhalation. Avoid further exposure to the gas by leaving the contaminated area. Stay indoors. Flush eyes and mucous membranes if you are having current symptoms. Shower to remove chemicals on the skin. Remove exposed clothing, and albuterol inhaler may be helpful. Your 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 symptoms have gotten worse as the week has gone
Yeah,
on. You also, correct me if I'm wrong, had a bloody nose.
I did. Yesterday morning, I woke up, felt like my nose was stuffy, that like same sensation, blew my nose, and it was blood. There wasn't snot, it was blood in my tissue. So that's abnormal for me. That's never happened unless I have like an illness at the time. And so it just was very alarming. And last night I had what felt like a mild asthma attack. I have activity induced asthma. And so when I have asthma attacks, it's typically because I'm like running super fast and hard. And honestly, I haven't had to use my inhaler in about 2 years. Like I felt like I had grown out of a lot of my asthma symptoms. But last night I felt that like same rattling in my chest that I used to feel when I would go for a run and didn't use my inhaler beforehand. So yeah, symptoms are clearly worsening for me. I guess just the length of exposure at this point has bothered my lungs and nasal passages and sinuses and everything else.
And also, I'm not a home improvement person, but you could close your windows, you can close your doors, but stuff comes into homes through attics, through chimneys, etc. You seem calm, but you seem relatively young. Your sister, I'm assuming, is young.
Yeah.
You got bloody noses. Her doctor's telling her she's got chlorine gas exposure. Your kid's sick. I assume this is a little scary for you.
It's terrifying, and I feel like maybe I'm at a place where I've kind of just like shut down a little bit because we've got absolutely no support from our government again, and we need our jobs to live and survive. And I can't just take off work and leave and evacuate in a way that I would love to do without the city like explicitly telling us to evacuate, because obviously then our jobs would be closed for the week or whatever. So I feel like I'm just at like such a I'm in between a rock and a hard place where I don't know what to do. And it scares me that in crises like this, I feel like many of us freeze because we aren't used to having crises like this. And I feel like recently there's just been one after the other. And a lot of us are just kind of like paralyzed in place and not sure what to do. And it's just ringing all types of alarm bells for me, just even with everything going on with the aftermath of the hurricane and just like our response to that. And just, I don't, I don't know that we as Americans are prepared for the crises that are coming, basically. And I don't know that we even have, it just feels like everything is intentional, and that like we are so reliant on our jobs, we are so reliant on these like comfortable lives that we live, that we're stuck when it comes to making major decisions about how to protect ourselves in situations like this. So
I would
again,
also add, I don't think most Americans
mm,
are prepared or aware. I mean, there was just a football game last night
yep,
at the Atlanta Stadium.
yep,
Not that Amazon, which broadcasted the game, is a news outlet, but they didn't even mention that like there's a haze over the stadium in Atlanta because of this. There was
very,
a vice presidential debate. I don't recall them even mentioning this. Georgia is a swing state. I don't think either campaign has really
nope,
said anything.
nope,
So it's kind of just like, let's normalize the abnormal
yeah,
and act like a chemical bomb. And I don't think that's too dramatic because chlorine gas was a weapon in war. Let's just kind of go about our business and pretend it's not happening.
yep. Very, very alarming what we're normalizing. And I mean, the precedent being set at this point is just disgusting, and it's scary. And I'm nervous that not enough people are pushing back, including myself. Like there are things that I could be doing to push back even further about what's happening. Because again, I think the more silent we fall and the more that we take the lead of the government and like brushing things under the rug, the more dangerous precedent we're setting for future crises and whatnot. So very scary stuff for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you for posting your sister's stuff online. That's how I saw what was going on. And stuff like that actually matters. I mean, I think local news should be reaching out to people like you, but if they're not going to, I'm going to. Most people, including you and your sister, can't just hunker down for a week and not work and do things. Tell me about your sister. Is
Yeah.
she able to stay indoors?
So my sister's a teacher, and she works at a school with autistic children, and so she has dead days. So she's not able to take off of work. It's like it has to be really, really bad for you to have to leave work. And so her symptoms had gotten so severe that she had to leave early and go to the urgent care. And when she arrived at the urgent care, she let the doctors know about all of her symptoms. The doctor that she was originally working with, my sister had mentioned that she knew that about the chlorine gas in the air, and she was wondering if maybe she was being irritated by that. The doctor told her that she didn't know anything about that and she didn't know what she was talking about. And so she was like, let me go talk to my colleague. She came back to my sister and told her that her colleague had seen 3 other people with similar symptoms who had mentioned potentially being exposed to chlorine gas the day before. And so kind of started some chatter around their office about what was going on. So yeah, so we, like you said, are not in the position to evacuate. We have jobs here, and because the government is telling us that everything's fine, it is normal. I just saw a video from the fire chief who's working at the site of the fire saying it is normal to smell chlorine gas. His verbiage, I'm sure, was a mistake, but just hearing that out loud just sounds very wild to me. But yeah, we definitely can't leave. Our jobs are not shutting down. My sister works at a school and they have outdoor playtime a lot, which is another reason I think she's experiencing such severe symptoms.
To
Because
be clear, they're still sending kids outside.
that's right. Even my daughter's school, thankfully, my daughter's been out this week because she's been sick, but her classmates have been outside all week. They sent home a notice on Tuesday, which was basically just a screenshot of the emergency notification we got from the city. And they said that the city said it's fine, everything's okay, everything's at normal levels. Let us know though if your child has asthma, and we'll keep them in. But every other child is currently playing as normal, at least in DeKalb County. I know Rockdale County is virtual this week because of a holiday, or they're virtual next week, and right now they're out this week. And Rockdale County is where the actual fire is happening. But DeKalb County is in school, and they're still playing outside, and yeah, going on about as usual.
I want to get into because it's just alarming to me.
Mhm.
You said you found out about this from Twitter,
Yeah.
so it seems like the media somehow wasn't reporting this right away, or your
Nope.
local government wasn't communicating. Then you're telling me your sister's doctor didn't know much about it. So it
Nope.
seems strange to me that you would have this chemical plume and this massive fire affecting not just like Conyers, where the plant fire happened, but as we speak, reports are the plume is still over Atlanta, a major American city. I've seen messages from people in Alabama that they're smelling chlorine. So this is a major disaster. Yet you didn't know about it unless you went on Twitter. The doctors don't seem to know about it, and you were describing that alert, which I think is
Mhm.
this, which I talked about earlier in the week. Georgia's version of FEMA sent out this note. People got it on their phones. They mentioned the EPA is monitoring, and they said chlorine and related compounds they're looking for. They failed to mention chlorine gas,
Mhm.
which is important. If you don't know, that was used in World War I as a chemical weapon. And these chemical levers are unlikely to cause harm to most people. So I guess you fall under that. You're not most people, which is pretty ableist if you ask me. First of all, 8 to 10% of Americans have asthma. That's probably an undercount, not to mention other illnesses or other immune issues that can be activated or triggered by chlorine gas in the air. Even if you don't have an autoimmune issue, it's going to irritate you. But what do you think about that? Went out like within, I believe, 48 hours.
Mhm.
I read it as nothing to see here. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
When doesn't seem everything's fine.
That's right. So, had I not had the symptoms and not already had the awareness that I have about governments and how they handle disasters like this, I would have seen that message and just gone about my day. I know my parents kind of did that, or my dad at least. My dad hasn't experienced any symptoms, and he saw the notice and was just kind of like, okay, like I guess that means we're good. And again, my daughter's school took that message the same way, like, okay, unlikely to harm anyone, so no need to change what we're doing. So yeah, it's really scary that that's the messaging that they're pushing forward. I feel like it's just a situation where, I don't know, it feels like a horror movie waiting to happen. Like in 10 years down the line, I am terrified to see the results of this long-term exposure that we're having. um So yeah, just very, very scary that that's the messaging that they're pushing forward, because a lot of people are seeing that and ignoring it, as they should, because it's telling you to basically ignore it unless you're, you know, a vulnerable person. And I feel like that puts the onus on the individual to determine whether or not they're somebody who's vulnerable. And again, if you're not diagnosed with asthma or an autoimmune disorder or anything like that, you kind of see yourself as untouchable by these disasters that happen. And I think that's purposeful. They want you to have to admit, like, oh, I'm a human being who could and will be impacted by exposure to chlorine gas. So yeah, pretty terrible.
Yeah. Also, I'm not there, so maybe you could tell me. The local media seems to be covering it, but kind of just regurgitating what the state is saying. I also don't really see a lot of questioning, like, why was this plant still open? Because it had 2 other fires or incidents, I believe, over the last 7 years. Can you touch on the media coverage there?
Yeah, so I don't watch a whole lot of local news, but in the past few days, I have been turning on Atlanta News First, and I've seen their segments on this. They haven't had many, but the ones that they have had, they've just been showing clips of Andre Dickens, his press conference that he did, I think, day before yesterday, where he
And
just
he's the mayor of Atlanta.
yeah, that's right. And he just repeated the message that they sent out 48 hours after the fire started, just telling people, like, don't worry, it's normal to smell chlorine gas. You'll smell chlorine before it can impact you, is the messaging that they're pushing forward. Um, so it's just
Are they citing any experts who back that up, or?
no, not at all. Not that I've seen. And again, I've only been watching Atlanta News First, so I'm not sure like what WSB TV is doing or the other networks. But yeah, they were literally just showing the clip and showed the clip of the plume or the actual fire at the location from like a drone footage, and that's about it. Just told people that the city's not concerned right now. There's nothing to be concerned about at this point. So.
And I want to point out, I actually put this on Twitter yesterday because I was just, I mean, I guess not surprised, but I guess he's a local meteorologist there, Brad Nitz.
Yeah.
He had posted. I've been digging through the air quality data from last night. I found chlorine 22 times higher than the action level and oxygen concentration below 19.5%. In English, that's not good. 22 times higher. And as I've reported with lead and other things, whatever they claim is the quote allowable limit, I would take with a grain of salt anyway. But then I don't know if he had pressure on him to, add this. He said, I spoke with the scientists at the EPA who wanted me to add that the peak level of 11 parts per billion of chlorine measured was an amount reached briefly and that they define action levels as a 1 hour average. So I kind of tweeted out, maybe stop just regurgitating the spin the EPA tells you, because that, again, it's more of don't worry. And, as government officials, there is a balancing act. You don't want to create a panic, but you also have to be honest with people. I don't care if you're immune compromised or not. If you are healthy, chlorine gas at, at high levels can affect anybody, healthy or not. And most people, whether it's asthma or other things, most people in America have some type of comorbidity, particularly the surrounding areas happen to be Black. We know, African American communities have higher rates of cancer, autoimmune issues, et cetera. So it just seems to me this is kind of like, hey, let the economy go march forward and go to work and deal with it.
100%. Yep. It feels very similar to the direction that they took with COVID. Just like, it's up to you as the individual what you want to do about it, but it's fine. Everything's fine. Just go to work, clock in, and you'll be good. Don't worry about it. So, yeah, just very disheartening. And like you said, just even the messaging around what levels certain people are picking up, and how like, oh, it's inaccurate if it doesn't stay at that level for more than an hour. And it's like, well, what if I was outside for that like 5 minutes that it was that high? Like, what's that going to do to me? You guys are not giving us any information about that, or letting us know like procedures to take other than again, just up to you. If you feel like it's unsafe, stay inside, I guess. Close your windows and don't turn on your AC. Like, it's just very
Yeah,
surreal.
it's like with COVID, the onus is put on you to
Yeah.
be the expert for you and your kids.
Exactly.
And I find it crazy that they still have kids playing outside in school